10-minute jazz lesson, episode 60. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 60 of the 10-minute jazz lesson podcast. My name is Nick Manella and welcome to the show. If you are brand new, I want to let you know how this podcast works. Every single week we're going to bring you a short and concise jazz lesson on a different topic, and you can find the free PDFs that go along with all these episodes at 10minutejazzlesson.com. That's the number 10minutejazzlesson.com. Got a lot of other really cool stuff for you to check out there, so make sure you go and visit the website today. Super excited to bring you this series of 3 episodes on upper structures. This is some advanced stuff, and we're really going to get into it over different chord qualities and give you a little bit of an introduction on how to get that really amazing upper structure sound, which is so much of what we love about modern jazz, is that kind of upper structure thing that's happening that a lot of our favorite musicians do. So hopefully we can shed some light on that over the next 3 weeks. But before we get into the episode, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. We would love to have you sign up for the 10-minute jazz lesson podcast Inner Circle. And you can find that on our website at the Inner Circle tab. And I am asking you with all my heart, if you get anything out of this podcast and you've got $10 a month to spare in your budget, please go and sign up for that. On top of getting the fantastic rewards, you're really keeping us in business. And that is super important to us. We do need that working capital every month to keep the show coming at you. So if you've got $10 extra every month and you appreciate what we're doing here and you appreciate jazz education, please go and sign up for that. It's also going to make you a much better musician, getting to study a transcription every single month, and you get a ready-made vocabulary list. We also have a brand new video course called Crush the Blues in 60 Days. We all know that when we get our blues playing together, everything else comes together a heck of a lot quicker. So go and check that out. You can find it in the store section of our website. All right, let's get into it. So this is going to be part 1 of a 3-part series. And what we're going to be investigating is what we call upper structures. So we all know that when we have a chord symbol, we can figure out what the 1, 3, 5, and 7 are, and that's our base chord tones, right? That's like the minimum viable product that we need to know in order to sound halfway decent when we're improvising over a certain chord. Now, this week we take the next step. So we're going to add a little bit of extra flavor to those basic 1, 3, 5, and 7 in the form of extensions. Now, if you don't know what extensions are, basically once we complete that 1, 3, 5, and 7, there's notes that are what we would call higher up in the chord that can make the chord sound very, very interesting. And some of them don't belong to the root or core scale that we utilize over this. So what we end up calling them is extensions. And some of them are going to give us really good dissonant notes. We all know that the difference between consonance and dissonance is what really keeps music interesting. So if you're not using any dissonance in your playing, it can get boring quickly. So we're going to step outside of just the regular scale and chord tones that go along with this and study some of these extensions. So here's what we're going to do over the next 3 weeks. We're going to take a look at the 3, what I consider this sort of the holy trinity of chord symbols. We're going to go over a major 7 chord, a dominant 7 chord, and a minor 7 chord. And I think you would agree with me that most other chords, probably 90% of the other chords you see, are derived from these 3 different chord qualities. So let's start this week. We're going to do the major 7 chord, and then we're going to work our way up to the more complicated one, being the dominant 7th chord. And for the second episode of the series, we'll worry about the minor chord. So today we're going to be talking about the major 7 chord, and we're going to be looking at a C major 7th chord. So by this point, especially if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you'll know what the 1, 3, 5, and 7 are over a C major 7 chord. C, E, G, and B natural. That's our 1, 3, 5, and 7. The meat of today's episode is going to come with the extensions that we can add on to those. And make sure you've got the PDF in front of you because it's all very clearly set up for you. So what we're going to add is the 9, the sharp 11, and the 13. All right. Now you can also think about that as the 2, the sharp 4, and the 6, but in jazz we don't really use those terms. You'll very rarely hear anybody call those notes, 2, sharp 4, and 6. What everybody really tends to call them is the 9, the 11, and the 13. And the reason for that is we're going to be placing them on top of the scale that we already have. That's why we call them extensions. So therefore we extend the numbers up past 8 where we have these higher numbers like 9, 11, 13. All right. So example 1, if you look at example 1 on your sheet, we're arpeggiating the chord in the most basic way possible. We're playing the 1, 3, 5, and 7. And then we're adding on top of that the 9, 11, 13, 9 sharp 11, 13, and then we're coming right back down those notes. So this is a more difficult arpeggio to learn because instead of just learning 4 notes, instead you're going to be learning 7 notes. And that's why I say that this is more advanced material. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is get used to the sound of going all the way up to the 13 by way of extensions and then coming back down. Check out what that sounds like. So we're giving ourselves a little bit more flavor on that, right? You can hear that those extensions, they definitely add something to the sound, and they add a really beautiful sound, actually. Check out what it sounds harmonically, meaning all the notes played together instead of linearly like we just played it. So you're starting to hear the little bit of dissonance and, the notes sort of rubbing together a little bit. But I think we'd all agree that that's a really, really beautiful sound. And it should remind you of some of your favorite modern jazz recordings. So now let's talk about how we can get this into our playing. One of my favorite ways to get it into your playing is to actually what we call superimpose a different chord over the top of the chord that we're already playing. So the first chord we're going to think about is actually playing a B minor 7 chord over a C major 7 chord. Now, we can't use the B minor 7 scale because that's not going to work. There's going to be a lot of notes in there that sound actually really, really awful. So we're literally just talking about using the arpeggio of a B minor 7 chord over the top of our C major 7 chord. So the notes for that would be B, D, F sharp, and A. And what that is over C major is your 7, your 9, your sharp 11, and your 13. So if you're playing over C major 7 and you want to do something a little bit more interesting, try arpeggiating a B minor 7 chord over the top of that C major 7 chord, and boom, you're using upper structure notes, and you're really creating a very, very interesting sound over the top of it. Let me demonstrate a little bit. I'm just going to do a little play along over C major 7, but I'm going to use the B minor 7 arpeggio over the top of this, and check out how it changes the sound. It adds a lot to it, doesn't it? It really gets us out of just playing in the key of C major and brings us to a whole new different world of sounds by just simply superimposing that one chord over the key of C major. All right, so there's B minor. Now, the other one is very, very similar, but does have some differences. So now if we, instead of taking the 7, 9, sharp 11, and 13, if we just take 9, sharp 11, and 13, we find ourselves with a D major chord that we can play over the C major 7. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, it's not all that different. All we did was we removed the B from the equation, but it actually results in a different sound, because now what we're doing is we're not outlining the key of B minor. Now we're outlining the key of D major, which does give us a different sound, as much as you might think it wouldn't. Remember, the simplest way to outline a key is to play the triad of that key. So now we're really drawing the ear towards D major instead of B minor. Here's what that sounds like, and this is exercise number 3 on your sheet, is kind of showing you how to use the D major over C major. And this is one of the most popular substitutions over a major chord, to really play in that major key one step up. And the best way to do that is by using the triad. Here's what that sounds like. Now, the ultimate way to make this stuff sound as good as possible is to actually switch between playing in the key of C major and then playing in these 2 other superimposed keys that we've just talked about. Now, that's obviously more advanced, so what I would start by doing is just simply playing in the superimposed keys and then work your way up to being able to switch back and forth between the keys. But just so you know what that ultimately sounds like, let me do a quick little demonstration on sort of going back and forth between C major, B minor 7, and D major triad. So it really unlocks a lot of those sounds that I think a lot of us want to know how to use but aren't quite sure how to achieve. This is the way. Start studying extensions and start studying the upper structures that the extensions provide you with. One more note before we go today. It's important to realize that even though we're using the sharp 11 here, you do not need to see a C major 7 sharp 11 chord in order to use that sharp 11. You can use it whenever you want, and you can use it freely. It is a great note, and you don't need to see it in the chord notation in order to use it. All right? Hopefully that all makes sense. Send me any questions. I have a feeling I might be getting some questions on this episode, as this is some pretty advanced stuff. But start studying this stuff, and you will hear a huge, tremendous improvement in your playing. All right, that's going to do it for this week. Stick around for part 2, where we're going to talk about the minor 7 chord. And please, consider joining the inner circle. We'd really, really appreciate that. And we really hope we're bringing you value every single month and every single week. And if you've got that $10 to spare, we would appreciate it so much. And you get some fantastic stuff in return for that. Don't forget to also check out our new video course, 60 Days to Crushing the Blues. And we'll see y'all next week when we take a look at upper structures over minor 7 chords. Have a good one, everybody.